we are back with our latest episode, wherein it is the candy show.
And Susie's just going to sit there with no supervision in her house.
Drinking beer.
Yeah, so hello.
I am actually drinking beer. It's not good beer. It's just beer. Gets the job done.
Yeah, it's beer.
It's beer.
Yeah. All right. So days ago, or perhaps minutes, possibly even seconds, I did mention I was going to talk about the lad school, which is actually a really sad story. But first, we'll go with the urban legends and the ghost stories and things like that, right? So this is a school in Rhode Island, and people have reported seeing apparitions and hearing voices, and of course there have been people that have disappeared there. You go and you hear ghostly voices. Allegedly people go in and go insane. I mean, I've read stories about all of the ghost things that could happen, pretty much every possible urban legend. And it sounds really scary. And then here's the thing, right? I think that maybe some of this haunting could happen because there's some nasty energy in that place. Nasty, like I would imagine that it feels just oppressive as anything.
Like East State Penitentiary.
Yeah, well, reason being, I'm going to give you the facts about it. The Ladd School was founded by a gentleman named Dr. Joseph Ladd in 1908.
You know, it's always the turn of the century kind of stuff that is the most haunted.
Yeah.
1900 to like 1930.
Yeah. The thing about him, he was a devoted eugenicist. Yeah. And the school was originally called the
Should we elaborate on what that is for those who are not in the know?
Yeah.
So eugenics is most popularly known from Nazi era World War II. And what they did was basically like tried to create the master race. It also happened in the United States as well.
A lot of it started here, unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly. So the Nazis actually like took a page from our notebook, unfortunately. But it also kept going here for much longer than they really like to admit. And in the American version, basically what they were doing was sterilizing people who were below a certain IQ.
Or undesirable.
Undesirable. Quote unquote.
The homeless, people with mental illness, people that were developmentally disabled, anyone that did not conform to whatever, gay people, transgender people, they would forcibly sterilize men and women.
Mm-hmm.
They would lobotomize people, and they would basically only the best in society can breed, and only the best in society deserve medical care.
Yes. So up until I think it was, and I mean, honestly, like
last week.
Yeah, exactly. So I know personally of one that happened locally,
mm-hmm.
where they were trying to basically, they were going to give her a hysterectomy. So she couldn't have kids because her IQ was like, it was well below average, and she kept running off with like whoever. Mm-hmm. And then her kids would come home and live with the grandmother. And so the doctor rather was like, look, this is going to keep happening. And the mom was like, we are not doing this. And so she fought it, but it would not have been completely unheard of for that doctor to just be like, bring her into the hospital.
What happens now?
Yeah, it happened recently.
Well, it's been in the news recently that women in the detention centers,
yeah,
by virtue of being brown and coming here not illegally, but to seek asylum, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
or being taken to a gynecologist, and he's been removing their uteruses, and they have not had this explained to them.
Yeah.
So, just for the crime of being poor and seeking asylum.
Yeah. And it's disgusting,
I have
is what
been.
it is.
I have
Oh,
been.
I kind of more beer. There needs to be more beer.
There's not enough alcohol in the world.
There really isn't.
Enough to make me feel better about it.
One thing that gave me a glimmer of hope was the speech at Gettysburg this past week, like yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. Biden did a great job giving that speech, and it was a fantastic speech. It was completely nonpartisan. And of all the places, I mean, Gettysburg, I had a tear.
Yeah, I got a little emotional myself.
Yeah. And to have it so close, like literally right down the road, and to fear going there to see it because it could potentially like be dangerous to
Yeah,
go see him speak. Or anybody speak for that matter. I mean, it's just been so charged around here, like a lot, like crazy, a lot. And I'm just kind of like, do I want to end up fighting somebody that I don't know over something like this? I don't know. If it comes down to it, I will, but I'd rather not.
best to stay home.
Yeah. So since it was a live broadcast, I did watch it on the live broadcast and literally stood up at my desk and was just like, that was beautiful. I mean,
Vacuum was happening in the back.
huh?
As the frantic vacuum was going.
Oh my god. No, you know what? He did stop and he came over and pretended to work. So for those who don't know, speaking of house divided, I'm not exactly conservative, but
Nuh-uh.
I know. I'm fiscally conservative, but ethically I'm not.
Yeah.
Yeah. My husband, on the other hand, is conservative all around. So, but beneath the crunchy exterior, he is actually a decent human being.
I has got a very good heart.
Yes, absolutely. And, which is why I'm still here. But yeah, so he did come over and sit down and pretend to work for the rest of the speech, which was kind of awesome. So I was like, I'm not even going to mention it.
Yeah, no need to. Except
Yeah.
for we just did. Sorry, man.
Huh?
I said except for now we just did, but so
Oh
do
yeah,
the
we did, but he's not going to watch this. He's never even read any of my books. Yeah, I mean, he's not a reader to begin with, but I mean, like he's never read any of my books.
That's not his thing. Like,
What?
that's why I just shrugged it off. That's really not his thing.
Yeah, and he thought my coffee table. Well, he thought my coffee table was a coffee table instead of my altar. So, and then pretended to be all surprised when he found out it was an altar, and I'm like, really? Like, it had a pentacle on it. Like it had a pentacle and candles and.
And to get us back on track,
Yes.
you would have been one of those undesirables that they would have locked in an institution.
Absolutely. I would have been
Paralyzed.
lobotomized long ago. I would have been burned as a witch.
Same. For a myriad of other things.
Oh yeah.
About myself. So yeah. So he was a devoted eugenicist, Joseph Ladd, Rhode Island. It was called the Rhode Island School for the Feeble-Minded. Yeah, that back then that was like the term. That was the scientific.
Yeah.
So he thought the best treatment for anyone with mental illness was just to remove them from society. families would send young children who hadn't done anything wrong. Just they'd be like hyperactive or act out, and
Kid.
or the mother died or the father died and couldn't take. They would just send young kids just to send them, and they would be stuck there for life. Women could be locked up until menopause or death.
Just for being women.
And as we were just talking about, sometimes they would sterilize them. Why? They might have had an extramarital affair. They might have gotten pregnant out of wedlock. They might have had a big mouth. They might have talked back to men. They might have wanted to vote. They might have been gay. They,
They might have demanded sexual satisfaction. I mean, literally any reason.
Yeah. Same for men. Men, they would put in there for being unemployed for too long, for being indigent, for being indigenous, for being black. They would just put people in there, and warehouse them. And in fact, in the 1920s through like the 1940s, they actually did call it a dumping ground. They didn't educate or train people as they claimed they were supposed to do, but they basically just warehoused them. In court cases, they would threaten from the bench judges as a punishment, and they would also use it as a way to end entire undesirable bloodlines. They would end families by sending people there. Like, not just like me, they would send my sister, my nieces and nephews, my entire, everyone blood related would go there. That's what they would threaten.
So it's basically the 20th century witch hunt.
Yeah. Well, except for with the mentally ill or the mentally disabled, because people didn't know what to do with them. And there was that expose by Geraldo Rivera, and not at the same school, but at a similar place. And the conditions were much the same.
Yeah.
The inmates, they called them inmates, not students, were brutalized. They were treated horribly. In the 1940s and 50s, the school was failing financially. So, LAD released a bunch of inmates. Why? Because nobody wants those people in their neighborhood. So in order to raise money and get money from the state, he released people and was like, see, you need us. We're good for society. There were a lot of health and rights violations, and they led to several deaths in the hospital, in the school. And one, for instance, which is just awful to me, a 9-year-old boy was left alone with an adult male inmate. Now, adult male, he was probably 20, but he was murdered by this adult man. Yeah, 1952. At one point, Ladd seemed to have some sort of change of heart and not want to be a eugenicist anymore. But by then, he was retiring, and it was too, yeah. Everybody wants to be good when it's time to face the maker, right? Eventually, the school was closed in 1993. The buildings have been torn down.
I am shocked it went that long.
I'm not. Pilgrim, what do they call it? Pilgrim Psychiatric Center on Long Island was one of those places that during the 80s, a bunch of people were released because of some law or bill or funding issue.
Well, yeah, it was a funding issue because Bellevue got a bunch of people released too.
And it only closed in the 90s. And it might not have been as bad because it was wealthier. It's a wealthier area, but it's bad. It was bad. And that's another place. Now, so I'm saying I can understand that place being haunted. Haunted as anything. The energy, even though they've torn down the buildings or whatever, the energy in that area must just be oppressive and awful. And I cannot imagine.
They might as well have salted the earth.
Yeah, well, I can't imagine that there's not bodies buried there,
Oh, I'm sure there are.
you know?
I mean, most of
Because
those
who's
places
looking for
bury
these
their bodies.
people? And that's the thing, like, who's looking for these people? I'm sure there was experimentation going on, all kinds of things, because nobody's looking for these people. Nobody cares about them.
Yeah.
It's just horrible. It's that whole mental health era is just a stain upon humanity, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much room for improvement in the mental health aspect of everything. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, not just here, but like worldwide, but especially here. Like we treat, any mental issue like it's the person's fault, and it's
Yeah.
not. It's not something they can help.
No, it's not. And it's treated. I say they because I have depression and anxiety.
Yeah.
Um, they treat it, doctors, sometimes other people. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean that you don't have physical symptoms. I've had anxiety attacks where I thought my heart was stopping and I legit thought I was having a heart attack.
My
Uh,
first panic attack.
the symptoms of a heart attack.
Mhm.
It's real, and it's not. There's nothing you can do to cause it. I
Yeah.
mean, the things that caused all of my issues were not things that I could control, and it was things that other people did to me. Not that I did with other people, but
Right.
other people did to me that caused it. Or just my genetics, because I get anxious and depressed about my physical state. And who wouldn't, you know? And it's there is a lot of room for improvement. I just
Absolutely. And I
I
mean, one of the things that we one of the things that we don't tend to really look at as a society, like we look at our family trees, but I just did an exercise this past week where I looked at my family tree in relation to relationships, mental health, genetics, like anything that might have potentially been wrong, genetically, that kind of stuff. And was able to trace a lot of the issues that I've been having now, not only back into my parents, but also even before that,
Mhm.
where it's just like, hey, stuff that, the old stories of, my great grandfather and stuff like that. I'm like, there's a story that we heard where the great grandfather, or our great grandfather, would grab the kids. He'd hook himself up to like a car battery or something, because it was funny. And, he'd grab one of the kids and give him a zap. And I'm like, the dude was basically giving himself shock treatment.
Mhm.
And I'm like, okay, so how much of that going back, you know, however many hundreds of years, because in Italy we had the bathhouses, which were filled with lithium,
Right.
lithium in the water. And I'm wondering just how much of that affected Italian people in general for generations, because they had generations of people going into these hot baths of lithium, and then they stopped.
I knew they were all chilled out, you know?
Well, yeah, and I'm like, okay, so for my family, it's a lot of stuff that would typically get treated with lithium. Um, and I'm wondering how much of that, I'm wondering if there's like a study that they could do, even where it's like, could you trace back to your family, whether they were like in this area that was very popular for these lithium baths, and do you now have some sort of issue that's
Because it
treatable by lithium? Because that would be a really interesting study, I think.
would be because did you somehow genetically adapt to where you need it? Yeah, I see where you're going.
Exactly. And I feel like that might be, where it's like, okay, everybody in the rest of the world just assumes Italians are passionate, and maybe it's lithium withdrawal. It's like we're passionate because we really need lithium. We really need a lithium bath.
I'm not I'm not Italian in any way, shape, or form. I get excited, as you know.
But I'm wondering how much of it is
Yeah, no, I
could
know.
be traced back to that one thing, where it's like, okay, we've got lithium, we've got um, lead in the wine goblets and stuff like that. So how much of that affected generations moving forward, not only in Rome, but like worldwide? Because
Arsenic in the dyes, when they would make that beautiful bottle green. And yeah, it would kill people, but how much of that? Because let me clarify, let me start my train of thought at the beginning instead of in the middle. Yeah.
back it up to the station, Candy.
So going along that line, how much of our DNA has been changed to need some things or to cause some things because of what people were doing
Hmm.
back in Victorian times, like with the arsenic dyes and things like that. And a good example of something like that happening, my dad was in Vietnam. Um, he is he was an Agent Orange survivor. There is a program that I've been told about happening with the VA where they are contacting children of Agent Orange survivors that were born after they had been in Vietnam and been exposed, because apparently Agent Orange may possibly have changed their DNA, may possibly have caused mutations. Now, going along with that, my dad had an autoimmune illness with the Guillain-Barré syndrome.
Hmm.
He was in the hospital for like, he was in a coma, a medically induced coma for months. And then he was in physical therapy home, whatever, a nursing home, but it wasn't, it was like a rehab.
Assisted living.
Yeah, but it was like to rehabilitate him for about a year. And like he eventually came back from it and was able to walk again, but he lost all control of his nervous system. And it was probably related to that. My sister and I both have autoimmune disease related to our nervous system and our bones. Yeah, I'm not going to blow up my sister's spot because, she deserves her privacy, but she has similar illnesses to what I have, and I have a bunch of them. Um, and I have a lot of nerve issues. I can't feel my feet at all on a good day. I can stick a pin in just one part of my leg. You can stick a needle in there and I won't feel it. And it's just a circle on my leg about that big on my thigh. Hmm. My hands and feet tingle all the time. I can't feel my feet, but they tingle and they hurt. And they don't know how much of that is caused by lupus or rheumatoid arthritis or just this nerve pathology that I have or the condition in my neck and back. Like it could be anything.
Right.
And they don't know how much of all of that is caused by my dad's exposure. And then I also was exposed. And that might be why I'm sicker than my sister. Defining sicker, though, it's all relative because I may have more conditions that are named. She's just in bad a shape as I am.
Right.
Yeah, it's wild,
Yeah.
and knowing, like, even if they could come up with a way that you could take a vitamin or do something to avoid it, would be phenomenal.
And I'm wondering how much of all that stuff got into the drinking water too.
Yeah.
Like, not only the bathhouses, but aquifers. I mean, there had to have been lithium in there.
And now here's the thing, right? The whole rage is to drink bottled water from the aquifers. What are we drinking?
I know where one of the aquifers is for a bunch of them. It is up in Foxledge, Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, it's a relatively pure aquifer, but there are also some of the watersheds for that aquifer are dumping grounds for pharmaceutical companies
Mhm.
because it's an acceptable amount being dumped
Yeah.
into the reservoir. So it was interesting being up there and finding out that these pharmaceutical companies were like, okay, and not just pharmaceutical companies, but like other companies too, were
Mhm.
dumping this stuff into this reservoir that was feeding like big cities. So New York and probably DC, probably Baltimore, probably Philly, probably Pittsburgh. I mean, it was, trace where that water's going at that point, because I'm sure it's spreading more than just into New York. But yeah, I mean, it's something we tend to take for granted, I think, is like, oh, hey, we've got drinking water, and we don't think about what's in it.
This water, oh, I've got this bottled water because I don't drink the tap water here by me
Yeah.
because we live near an old military firing range and I don't know what's seeped into.
Oh,
But, I'm trusting that the bottled water at the store is going to be safe.
yeah, Fox Ledge is decent.
Mhm.
The plant itself looks shady. It's literally like a metal shed. It's a big metal shed, like somebody's garage, up in the Poconos. But it is part of the aquifer that's feeding like a bunch of big name bottled water plants. And they basically just package it up and put a different label on it and charge extra.
Yeah,
But they sell it by the gallon locally
yeah.
for like 25 cents.
Mhm. Um, we've been talking a while, and
Yeah,
I promised to talk about Mercy Brown, and I'm thinking,
we can do that for the next one, I guess.
well, I was going to say what we could do, because this episode is getting long, we could do a quick mini episode and put that in the fans of Facebook page, the private Facebook page. So there'll be a mini episode in there.
I like it.
So I'm sorry there's no comedy. This one was pretty deep and
It did get deep. It got
did.
really deep. And, I blame the beer. Because as you can see, and this happens to me even when I have vinegar, I get rosy cheeks.
Yeah, I blame my just general constant state of mind. I'm always thinking about weird stuff like this, but well, not necessarily weird, but
I
stuff.
worry. I
I,
worry about the world in general. So,
yeah, I overthink things a lot and how to make things better and what would I do, what will I do when I'm empress of the planet, like that,
as one does.
as one does. When one has the super rabies.
You do have the super rabies mad dog.
Right.
Trademarked. So we will catch you on the Facebook fan page with the
Mercy Brown.
yes, Mercy Brown, and then we'll see you guys back here for Witch Windows. Did we talk about Witch Windows?
I'm pretty sure we talked about witch windows. If
I
not,
feel like we did.
we didn't talk about witch windows. Shoot us a message. We'll talk about witch windows. And we will continue on our virtual road trip. We've covered New England, so shall we remember that the world is not the United States and go somewhere else for our next few episodes?
I feel like since we're kind of banned from the rest of the world right now, we should probably just keep the road trip to the US.
I know a guy we can get in.
I don't know if we can get out is the problem.
Do we want to?
Get out of here?
Oh, no, I meant out of Europe in general.
Oh no, I mean once I'm there,
Well, considering it's a virtual road trip and the internet goes everywhere, I think we'll be fine.
that is true. Okay, so the
World
next
Wide Web.
the next destination. Where are we going, travel agent Candy?
Eastern Europe. Let's go to the Balkans.
Okay.
Stuff in the Balkans coming up next. If you have any ideas of places you would like us to look up weird stuff in, like, comment, subscribe. Like, comment, even if you don't have a weird thing, even if you just want to say, hey, you guys suck, that's fine. We'll answer you. I mean, but comment, subscribe, hit the button thing, whatever, the bell.
Do the dealy with the thing.
Yeah, do the stuff. It's down there.
Oh
Like
yeah.
and stuff, and yeah, we're like professionals. Like
Like professionals, but not.
like professional, but not quite professional.
Yeah, we're getting there. We're getting
Yeah. All right. So in mere seconds for us, but at some point when we feel like doing it for you, we'll be on the fans page with the Mercy Brown episode. Maybe it'll happen before this. Maybe it'll happen after. You never know unless you go on the private page.